about nostalgia. About nostalgia, if you want, I I can share uh, the chapter. Um, yes, now I send it into chat. Okay, can I start now, or we should wait?
I think Umberto's disappeared for a minute.
Okay. Mhm. Dear colleagues, I'd like to start, and I'm very glad to see you all. And Umberto is trying to join us, and while I'm starting, and you see the topic of my presentation. I'm engaging in the sociology of emotions, and considering the last events in the global world, I focused on the nostalgia as a very widespread feeling in modern society. And recently, I started to think about it and about the social consequences of the nostalgia. And um, the Russian case is a very special case in the background of the issue of nostalgia, and recently also I'm considering about the relation between nostalgia and alienation. And I discovered that it is very complicated issue, and a very complicated material, and 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 at the same time I discovered that there are many publications on nostalgia, and some of them dedicated to the nostalgia and alienation. And today I'd like to think about the relation between these two notions, and on the example of Russian post-Soviet nostalgia. And you see in the picture the plan of my presentation. And first of all, I'd like to formulate some questions about the nostalgia and alienation, and then I'd like to tell you about the nostalgia, the special feeling, and the special emotion or the special sentiment. There are no difference, and to describe nostalgia as in different hypostases, in different kinds of it, and then I'd like to describe this post-Soviet nostalgia briefly, and in the conclusion, I'd like to formulate some notions about the relation between nostalgia and alienation, and to describe some research perspectives. First of all, I'd like to tell that nostalgia and alienation as phenomena and as terms and theoretical tools really endemic to the capitalist society, because social scientists became to think about the nostalgia and to research nostalgia only in capitalist societies. And nostalgia begins with the rise of capitalist society, because of social and geographic mobility, and capitalist society begins with the considerations on nostalgia as a physical disease. But during the 20th century, this notion had become more complex, and nostalgia is used as a theoretical instrument to understand the social change and the social psychological consequences of the social change and transformations. And alienation too is true to the theoretical notion to understand the contemporary society and contemporary capitalism. And these two concepts is really related to the analysis of capitalist society. And I guess there is some relation, some connection between these two theoretical instruments. And the most difficult to me was to describe the alienation, to determine alienation. And I've chosen the general sense of concept of alienation as Melvin Simon formulated it. And this is the most general points. And all of these are related with the emotional experience. And my general question is how to connect alienation with nostalgia. And I guess there is some connections between them, but is social nostalgia the consequence of the alienation, or nostalgia contributes to alienation in modern world, and so on? And these two general questions, and I try to answer today. But my focus is on the nostalgia. And to understand nostalgia, and there are my main ideas. I'd like to present them at the beginning of my presentation, and in order to better understand what I'd like to say today. And the first idea is to analyze the dysfunctions of nostalgia, negative emotional experience, and dysfunctions of the widespread of nostalgia. And then I'd like to focus on the collective social nostalgia, and as individually typical sentiment and group feeling or feeling thinking, because nostalgia contains a narrative about the past. And then I'd like to outline that in modern society, nostalgia is connected with the myth making about the past, and with the political utopias and propaganda and so on, and especially politics of nostalgia, when a nostalgic feeling is when nostalgic feelings are manipulated by politicians and some group interests and so on. And on this basis, I'd like to postulate that nostalgia, in some extent, alienates people from their past, present, and paradoxically from their future. And in this respect, I'd like to present briefly the case of the post-Soviet nostalgia in Russia. And I'd like to mention that in modern Russian society, many people don't feel nostalgia itself. They feel something different feelings, but based on nostalgia, because many people can't say that they feel nostalgia for the late USSR or for the late Soviet period. They feel something different. They feel that post-Soviet times were good, were right, and so on. And that nostalgia is mutated to some other feeling based on the nostalgic feelings and politics, state politics especially. And then, and some words about the nostalgia itself. in more general sense, the nostalgia is the longing or feeling loss about the traditional institution, values, and relationship. It's the capitalist feature to feel nostalgia for traditional societies, traditional communities, and so on. At the same time, nostalgia has some emotional side, and people naturally feel nostalgia when they try to cope with the traumas of social change and transformation. And we can say that nostalgia is a kind of adaptive, therapeutic emotional response and emotional mechanism to cope with the social circumstances, social permanent social changes. And in that sense, Russian people have unique circumstances because we live in nostalgic ecosystems. We see all the traces of the Soviet period, and really, we every day we see the traces of the Soviet times, and we live with that things, with that material environment, and with the people who lived in Soviet period. And the most general cause of the nostalgia, widespread in nostalgia, is the experience of social change and crisis and transformation. And in that sense, nostalgia is really connected with collective memory. And it serves as a mediator between individual memory and collective memory. And in these circumstances and in permanent rounds of social transformation, especially in Russia, I guess some group of interests formulates some sort of affective politics or affective policy, I must say, based on the nostalgia. And so what's about the social sciences and how they study this phenomenon. And really, nostalgia is very wide term and some sort of the umbrella notion because it combines some different phenomena. But many social scientists really have consensus about the some changes in the understanding of nostalgia phenomenon. And now nostalgia is not so the longing for the motherland, for the some private space, but it is the some sort of the historical emotion and longing for the not for the home but for the time period of time, special period of time. And in early times in 18th or 19th century, nostalgia was really physical disease, very deep longing for the motherland. But now every human being in the modern world can feel nostalgia. And for example, for the pre-pandemic times, or really about the pandemic times where people were in their homes and communicate with their relatives, they have rest and so on. We have nostalgia every time because the pace of the modern life is very high. And in that sense, different specialists in anthropology, in sociology, in social psychology understand the nostalgia as in 5 different different meanings. And you see in the last notion in the picture, you see these meanings as a defensive psychological mechanism, as a part of the collective memory, as a part of political ideology, as a part of mass culture, and as a commercial strategy, because it's nostalgic products are really are selling sold very well in different societies. It's very very profit commercial commercial deals with nostalgic consumption in every society. You can observe in different domains of the society. It's very interesting thing, and I would say that nostalgia is a contagious feelings, and it's really widespread in global world now, but in different forms. And what is essential about nostalgia as a feeling, or as emotion, or a sentiment, as social emotion, that nostalgia is very ambivalent feeling. And psychologists usually determine nostalgia as a bittersweet emotion, mixed emotion, positive, negative emotion, and nostalgia has different sides, negative and positive, because it's very sad feelings combined with the positive feelings, and nostalgia is very reflexive feeling. The happy recalling of the past, and at the same time it's a feeling of the loss. But what is interesting in the recent psychological studies of nostalgia, that nostalgia is very sensitive to the social context and social circumstances. And usually nostalgia is colored by the maybe positive emotion when all is well, and but it is coloring with negative emotions when not when we have not well-being, or we have, for example, really devastating social context. For example, exclusion, poverty, failures, and so on, and especially some maybe tragic event. And nostalgia can be very sensitive to it. And I would say that all the such a complicated feeling are ambivalent, but nostalgia is especially ambivalent in that sense. Okay, and I'd like to outline some functions of the nostalgia to better understand that complicated feeling. And you see that most of the, especially social psychologists, really outline their functions, positive functions of nostalgia. And you see this. These functions, some examples, it's not a full list of such functions, but you see the functions as the social psychological mechanism, and nostalgia connected to the establishment of social solidarity, and nostalgia facilitates some adaptation to different cultures and so on. Really, nostalgia is in many respects is positive, is reflective, and so on. But at the same time, in the great body of studies, we can see there some dark sides of nostalgia, or dysfunctions of this feeling. And you see in the picture some examples of the recent publications in which I saw some really um, really dark sides of the especially collective nostalgia, social nostalgia, and you see them here. It's break of the solidarity and out group directed negative feelings, and you see the connection of nostalgia with the racial prejudices, and really we have some publication about the connection of the nostalgia with the populist social movements and populist politics and so on. And for example, you see here even bribe taking is connected with nostalgia, really. Uh, um, in that sense, I try to present some types of nostalgia to understand these studies that I mentioned. And the most famous, the most well-known classification of nostalgia feeling is was formulated by the Svetlana Boym, American American social thinker, and she divided nostalgic feelings in two types: reflective and restorative. There are many other classifications, not maybe divided in two types, but all the classifications that I know are really similar to that basic classification. I know that classification is often limited our thinking, but all in all, these two types you see here. First type is reflective nostalgia or symbolic nostalgia, when people even in collective form, really are reflecting about their past. Reflected not in positive way, but reflect to uh, to uh, um, maybe to find some ways to cope with the present problems and to overcome the past and so on. And the second type of nostalgia is restorative nostalgia, and you see the name of this type is really uh, um, tell us that that this type is dysfunctional type of shadow nostalgia that they directed to the restorate, to rebuild the past, and it is related to the restoration of the traditional and authoritarian regimes or communities, and to maybe to fill the gap when we can't find the ways to deal with the current problems. And the well-known social thinker Zygmunt Bauman really wrote about this type of nostalgia as retrotopia. That is, to his mind, is very dangerous because it is really myth making about the past. And I'd like to show you my question that I posed in my publications that I have sent you in the chat, that under what condition can nostalgia transform in retrotopia or restorative nostalgia? Restorative nostalgia. And this picture, to my mind, is the main in my presentation, because we really know that when society tries to return to the past or to rebuild the previous social mechanism or social institution, it is very dangerous for this society, because in new social circumstances is really wrong strategy, and I'd like to point out that nostalgia is not only dangerous as a state politic, but it is dangerous as the emotional mechanism, because we should analyze not only the social circumstances but emotional dynamic of the nostalgia, because I discovered in some publications and in Russian studies that nostalgia can merge with the resentment as a social feeling, and can pull people to accept conservative politics and very authoritarian politics, and this alleviate or facilitate for them to their coping with their social transformation. And and I like to point out that when we see that nostalgia is widespreading, we could assume that nostalgia can be really effective emotional defensive mechanism, but when it's combined with the politics, state politics, it is very, very dangerous, because it is maybe invisible but very effective emotional regulation. And some feelings can be transformed to the feelings of negative feelings that people experience to the out groups, because people try to overcome these negative feelings, their fears, their shame, and so on, and guilt to some extent, and to be in more preferable moral position. And nostalgia usually pulls some people to think that someone is guilty for their not so well position, and guilty for some social problems, really. And I'd like to illustrate this thesis on the example of post-Soviet nostalgia in Russia. And I'd like to show you some results of the.
C'est un truc d'autre. Est-ce que il y a de la spécialisation médiatique?
Excuse me?
Parce qu'il y a de la transversalité médiatique, ces trucs-là.
And I'd like to show you some results of the service in sociological service in Russia, and you see the years, and all these service show that we can observe the permanent increase in nostalgic feeling for the late Soviet period, certainly, because in our country, many people lived in the Brezhnev era, and they really remember this period of time. And you see here that in the social consciousness of the Russian people, the Soviet period associated with the ultra stability, with the hope, with the right way of living, and so on, and so on. And really, the late Soviet period has positive image, and people really regret about that. And I would say that nostalgia as a mood, as a representation, is well established in Russian society now, and maintained by the Russian state. And you see there not only in everyday representation of people, but we can observe it in our mass culture. Many facts of that. We see it in businesses, and many people participate in internet communities that dedicated to the Soviet times, and even young people think that Soviet period was not so bad and interesting, and needs to reflect about it, and so on. And you see, for example, the results of one of the study in our country in 1911. I think it's maybe not so rigorous study, but it showed that in every groups, in many categories of Russian people, we can observe nostalgic feelings. For example, it's not surprising that nostalgia feel, for example, military professionals, but it is interesting that school children know about Soviet times, and in some sense really feel nostalgia, because in their environment people talk about the USSR and talk about the advantages of Soviet times and so on. And especially pensioners have positive image of USSR, but I really don't think that it's really really so. But but at least they don't resist some image of USSR. They prove, and at the same time, the current events and the current state of things in Russian society. All in all, I'd like to say and outline the main features of post-Soviet nostalgia. And my main thesis is that this nostalgia really mutated or transformed the retrotopia. Really idealization of the Soviet past, and really reinforced by the discontent of the or disappointment of the so-called capitalist tone. And this nostalgic mood combined with the memory of the World War II, and especially with anti-Western, anti-democratic sentiment or considerations. It is very unique combination, but that is. And what is very indicative in this relation, that nostalgia turned to or manipulated by the is manipulated by our government, and really produce some media content and political claims based on nostalgia. Not so nostalgia, but on the reconstruction of this past social institution. This is based on the pride of our country, patriotism, and the reminiscences of the greatness of our country in the Soviet times. Great education, great science, all great. But and this feeling of loss of some great country is predominant in the political strategies. I'm not sure that all people in our country feel the same. No, but our political agenda is based on the nostalgic feelings, and on the basis of the nostalgia as a social psychological mechanism. What is interesting in recent events, that is the most recent surveys showed that in 2022, when the war began with Ukraine, this negative, genuine negative emotional background is weakened. And this is a very interesting fact, because really I see in this the justification that nostalgia really mutated to the retrotopia, because many groups of people in our country really feel something like pride, and was proud of our country, or something really positive. And of course, the negative feeling to the imagined West or Westerners or something like that. In the sense that imagined West is guilty in what is happened. And all in all, after that, I'd like to I turn to conclusion, and I'd like to say that I tried to explicate some connections between nostalgia and alienation. Firstly, I'd like to say that when nostalgia becomes an effective policy of the state, it is really alienating. It is really alienating, because it alienates people from their past, because this is really myth making, and from the present, because people don't see the sources of their current problems, and from the future, and nostalgia can lead to alienation, because it provides some breaking of solidarity between in the society and beyond this society, beyond the society's whole. And when nostalgia combines with resentment feelings, it can be alienating, because it provides some not only dividing but hatred and hostility to outgroups, and even when nostalgia is used as commercial strategy, is also alienating, because this product produce some wrong image of the past. And nostalgia can be alienating when it becomes when it go in mass culture, in series, in songs, and in some internet sources and groupings, and so on and so on. These groups produced surely not only positive view of the past, but when all these circumstances are combined, we can observe many internet communities that really feeling a loss or of the previous great times, or something positive. They build positive image of the past. And I'd like to say that nostalgia can lead to alienation from the past, the present, and the future. And we see this especially vividly, this process in the Russia, in the Russian society, because this society don't have the image of future. And many people in our country really have not any hope for the future, but they can reflect on the past, and they can reflect on some features of the past societies, and look for the some restorations of the previous adaptive strategies, and so on and so on. And the last the last slide of my presentation show some questions that I try to answer. The main question is, can we really manage with the spreading of nostalgic feelings? No, I would say, but we can really manage or resist to the unification of the, for example, collective memory about the past. We can really resist to the nostalgic politics, and we can resist to unification of the image of the past, and we can go to the inclusive strategies and to hear some different voices about the past. But in our country, now we have no such possibilities to resist this neo-Stalinism and authoritarian regime. But at the same time, we can critically think about the past, and really we have resources. And for example, now in our country became very popular series about the Soviet past, about the criminal groupings of young people in our country at the beginning of the perestroika. And I see in it a very good sign, very good symbol to think about the Soviet past critically. And maybe we should have hope for the future. Thank you for your kind attention, my dear colleagues, and I'd like to hear your questions and maybe some comments about my really only theoretical considerations about nostalgia and nostalgia politics. Thank you very much.
That's very nice. Can you hear me? Good, good. Because you couldn't hear me before. Congratulations, Olga, for bringing us such a wonderful work. I have my notes here, but I am going to pass the floor to the others, and afterwards I will give you my remarks. Okay. Let me check here. Vesela has raised her hand first. Please, Vesela, you have the floor.
And thank you, Umberto. Actually, it was Andrew who was first, but I think that, ladies first is not such a bad idea, huh? Thank you very much.
Sorry, Andrew.
Yeah. Do you hear me? Huh? Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much, Olga. It was really a very rich and very interesting presentation that comes in a very strange period of time in the history of this civilization, I think. It will be not an exaggeration to say this. And I think that this is a very important study. I'm very pleased that I had the chance to hear this today. And I have, as Humberto said, I also have a lot of notes here, perhaps more like, tips for further development, because this is really a very interesting theory that relates nostalgia to alienation. And I have some comments here. Briefly, I will try to mention them, and then if you have further wish, we can discuss them further some other time. First of all, I wanted to say that nostalgia, as you were talking, seemed to me very much related to what other scholars talk about around here, and this is depression. So I was wondering whether you can actually relate the two concepts, because depression is on the top of the list, when you come to Western countries, advanced capitalism, especially in feminist studies, the studies about emotions. So depression has very similar effects like alienation. So because actually people become paralyzed, they cannot, take care of their daily work and routines, and they are not motivated. And so, I mean, this can be an interesting connection. Okay, you can think further about how to do this if it is interesting for you. So the second thing I want to say that you're talking here about alienation from the past, from the present, and from the future. But you also mentioned that, in a sense, I think there is a kind of a competing interpretation that you also, slipped into the presentation, that there is a phenomenon of disappearance of the future. So it's not so much that they are alienated from the future, but just there is no future. It's not that the future is becoming more distant and so just, we have a kind of a shrinking time horizons. And so there is perhaps a horizon, the past is open, you can, go further and have this nostalgia, but there is no future. And that's why, just unless we unblock this kind of future, unless we have a kind of future horizon, we cannot just overcome nostalgia in a sense. So think about this. There is another also point here. I will suggest perhaps that you get access to this article. Maybe I have it someplace. I'll see. So there is a very interesting similar study from a Serbian scholar who came from Serbia to Nordic countries, and especially now, I think she's in Sweden now, Sabina Hadžibulić, who wrote about nostalgia. But she's writing about this is a different case, and so then you can improve your theory because it adds new dimensions to your theory. Because you're talking about nostalgia basically in respect to the past, and the past is not there anymore. But Sabina Hadžibulić is talking about nostalgia of immigrants. These are Serbian immigrants that are in Nordic countries, and they cannot, that there is a big nostalgia. They want to be back. It's not just to be back to the past. They want to be back to former Yugoslavia, but also even to Serbia. And they miss the food. They miss the, as you said, solidarity. There is no solidarity, here with the Nordic people. And so this is a very important thing, I think, to add a geographical dimension, because you're thinking only about temporal dimension, past, future, present, but also you can be nostalgic because your country is out there. It is unchanged, perhaps, maybe not very big crisis. It's there, but you're not there, so you're already someplace else. Or your country is totally destroyed, and everything that you really, remember about it is not there. But still, you have this kind of imagination, and you think that it is a kind of ideal, place where you want to return and so on. So think about this. How can you add spatial dimension to your theory in also conjunction with this kind of temporal aspect that you have? So solidarity is really a very important issue here. So maybe lack of solidarity is also having a kind of temporal dimension when you're alienated from the ethnic group to which you belong. Because other cultures are more specific. They have other perhaps rules of communication and social relations. And so also another thing that perhaps you have to think about, to what extent this theory that you're developing is typical for in general, or it is typical for these former countries. I can say that, first of all, countries that have been very big and then they are taken apart, maybe in so like Soviet Union, like Serbia. I mean, this is the most acute case of nostalgia, perhaps. And other people from perhaps smaller countries maybe don't have the same kind of, the feeling. So to what extent this is a universal theory, very abstract level, or maybe it is typical, maybe these are just cases, that you have to So how relevant is your theory to a kind of universal experience? So think about this if you think that it's a relevant issue. Also, I suggest that you also think about the connection between alienation and trust, because you say solidarity is something that they miss, but I also think that there are interesting statistics about trust. You know what happens with trust, especially in our European context and in other countries. You know, trust is disappearing basically. It's a kind of a social good that is not so much available. So how is alienation related to the disappearance of trust? Because people can perhaps meet other people, but they just don't trust them. And even, for example, those who migrate from the republics, the former republics, when they come, people don't trust them anymore. So before there was a kind of sense of trust, high trust, interpersonal trust. You trust the other people, you trust the government, you trust, that everything will be fine. But now this kind of trust in the social structure, in the social institutions. So there is a lot of statistic that can be very useful to support your, theoretical, ideas in this regard. And how to overcome this? I will go back to this Sabina Hadžibulić. Her article actually was about exactly how these people these are Serbs in Sweden, in Finland, in Norway, how exactly they are dealing with this nostalgia. And she actually had the empirical examples. So they are reviving some kind of rituals that were, very popular at home. And then these rituals become also rituals here. They're practicing these rituals that are related to a kind of also religious experiences. This is Orthodox Christian thing. And so this something like festivals, folk festivals, so something that is almost more important than Christmas and, other, Easter or so. And so maybe you can observe this in your context, that there are new phenomena like forming some kind of group feeling. So maybe groups that are performing rituals and thus reviving somehow the past in the present. And so these are my comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Vesela. It's extremely useful, your comments for me.
Yeah, so think further what you want to actually think about, or what perhaps is not very relevant from what you...
Yes, I must say the nostalgia is very complex phenomenon.
I agree.
It's
very complex.
I must say, not only feeling, but it is interesting to study the emotional side of nostalgia, because it's very indicative, for example, for the depressions. Yes.
Absolutely.
Nostalgia has a feeling of loss, shame, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very complex phenomenon, and so it's very nice that you're dealing with this. I think this has a great future, this kind of project. So thank you.
My concern is state politics, effective state politics, because it is not only politics and evil president, evil government, but the unique combination of the circumstances that make it possible to the ideological myth making and so on. It is very for Russia. That's it. Unique combination of the circumstances. Surely not in all countries the similar state of things, because for example, Germans feels some sort of nostalgia that called nostalgia in previous Yugoslavia. The people feel some sort of nostalgia, Tita nostalgia, and so on. They have nostalgia, but they not form some real estate politics in that respect. And in Russia is a very telling case in that. Okay, thank you so much.
Andrew?
Okay, thanks very much. That really was quite an impressive presentation, very thought-provoking. And the comments that Vesna made as well, many of them are quite insightful as well. Not many of them, they're insightful. The conversation has been directed to, shall we say, a former post-Soviet space in Eastern Europe, right? You're talking about Russia, but the implications for other republics of the Soviet Union. There are also implications for other countries in Eastern Europe that were, to some degree or another, members of a Soviet space or Soviet-style space. But actually, the question of nostalgia has been a matter of state policy, shall we say, in the United States as well, especially over the last 15 years or so. It first emerged with what was called the Tea Party movement. The Tea Party, the phrase, the term, of course, refers to a significant period in the revolutionary history of the pre-United States colonies in the 1770s. But then, of course, and it also emerged in respect to, it was not by coincidence that there was a president for the first time of African descent that people reacted to in not less, it was not particularly positive fashion. But of course, the former president of the United States, Donald Trump, make America great again. Okay, I mean, you could not find a phrase that's more nostalgic than that. And it's a very vibrant issue, a very important issue in the United States as well, because, well, if there was an election this afternoon, I think if you wanted to bet on who would win the election, you might bet on former President Donald Trump, whether you like it or not. But it's interesting that this nostalgia, well, what does the again mean in Make America Great Again, right? It's a reaction. Well, what could it be a reaction to, right? Because after all, you'd still have to say there's a substantial element of the United States power in the world. It can project economic power, military power, anywhere it wants to, okay? And it's very influential. Maybe it does not always get its way, the country, as it's perhaps used to, but when did it? I mean, when during the 20th century was the perfect expression of American foreign power? When was there such a case, right? Because during my lifetime, there's events in the Middle East, in Southeast Asia, and so on, that were not exactly victories on the part of United States policy. But so what's the reaction to that causes this nostalgia? Well, it's a reaction to something that many people consider to be positive in terms of liberal social values or in terms of identity politics, for example. Why is America not great now? Is it because the more African Americans have a place in society and politics and government? Is it that more women are now, their rights are respected and promoted in a different kind of a way? It's other ethnic minorities, perhaps their state in society has changed for the better, if we could say so in some way or another. And so the people in the United States who are nostalgic haven't particularly lost very much at all, right? They're because it's across social classes, right? Members of the elite, the political elites and so on, social elites, they liked America to be great again too, right? And working class people, middle class people, however that's defined, maybe in some sense their rights have begun to, or even their material lives have begun to deteriorate somewhat, and perhaps they don't make as much money as they used to or would like to, or something of the sort. But these kinds of things are well established in society in the United States now. And so you have people whose lives have not necessarily changed for the worse in any way, who are still capable of doing pretty much as a nation whatever they want in the world, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent. So these people are successful in a certain sense, politically successful in a certain sense, economically successful, politically successful, militarily successful. they're nostalgic. What are they nostalgic for? You know, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question. But what you've said is very thought-provoking, and I'll be interested to hear what you have to say about it now or later. So, thanks.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Yes, I'd like to say that nature of the modern society produces nostalgia, produces nostalgia, and nostalgia in the USSR is very interesting topic too, because Arlie Hochschild, the pioneer in the sociology of emotions, wrote the whole book about the strangers in Homeland and something like that. And she wrote about the Tea Party movement and about the so-called rednecks in America who supported Trump, and they really longer for the previous American values and so on. Yes, and Hochschild proposed that we should develop some sort of empathy, emotional regulation or something like that, to and to hear each other, and to build some new forms of solidarity to cope with the problems and to cope with the populist politicians. And yes, thank you so much.
Let me just add something. It is 12:20. We are going until 12:40. And the last 20 minutes, perhaps we'll have a business meeting about Research Committee 36 and what we're doing now in 2024. So please, Sujin, you have the word.
Should I be very fast? Okay. I just want to add something to Professor Miseva's comment about the dimension, time dimension and temporal dimension and spatial dimension. Zygmunt Bauman, in Retrotopia, he argued that returning to the mother's womb is the ultimate, how can I say, ultimate retrotopia. Like, yeah, as you know, maybe, yeah. It means the negation of the life itself. How can I say, in the nostalgic feelings, Bauman spots the negation of the life and the existence in the world, in people. So to relate this to Ms. Seba's comment, we can split, in some sense, the time dimension and the dimension of space. And Bauman, it is quite eccentric, but Bauman considered that to be nostalgic is against time phenomenon. I can say you are not accepting the time phenomenon in your life. So the contrast between time and space is quite important this time. So yeah, just to remind this thing. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sujin.
Gilbert, please, your turn.
Okay, good. Just to add something, it is very interesting because we've had the Brazilian experience of nostalgia. In our case, this nostalgia of a past that cannot exist anymore. It promoted the far right and those who are in favor of military dictatorship as we had in Brazil. So in this case, it is very interesting to understand that for this experience, nostalgia is also something classist. And as Vesela also put it, right, about that they don't have a future, about the immediate future that they cannot see. Those who experienced living in a favorable social and economical favorable way, that means heterosexual, white, middle class, bourgeois. So those who experienced safety during dictatorships, during regimes which inflicted pain and death to other portions of society. So in this case, it's very interesting to understand that something so important, so relevant. You know, Vesela mentioned the global experiences. Also, Andrew brought the global experiences of nostalgia as something that we actually don't recognize as a sociological concept. So it's very refreshing to understand and to hear that, because actually it's about a institutionalized memory, right? They want to bring memory back to life of something that is absence and has been absent for a reason. And I remember when you mentioned about this, how can I say, intergenerational connections, right? Because nostalgia is an ideology. It also connects generations and intercommunities, right? So communities, they get together around this nostalgia of a time that had been before, and because of the social change. I love when you bring the collectiveness, when you highlight that memory is collective, nostalgia is collective. So it's not about one individual missing at the past. So other than that, I believe that it's very interesting that real life experiences have paved our interests, our research interests, because I myself am interested in Bolsonaro movement in Brazil, the upsurge of the far right here in Brazil, and dictatorships and people venerating them. So now with your presentation, I can apply some of these indicators to Brazilian reality. And it's very interesting. And I want to talk more about that later. Okay? If you have anything to add.
We have another comments from the
Yeah, Jaul. And Ladan.
yes, yeah. Thank you so much, Umberto.
Where are you waiting for? Are we? I'm sorry.
Jaulon, you have the
Yes,
word.
yes. Thank you. Yes. Thank you for the talk. It's really interesting. I just have some short question. Like you said, the situation is again very interesting, but I'm not questioning. I'm rather asking your opinion on the matter. do you think, for example, the nostalgia and the entire nationalism, chauvinism, whatever we call it, is the cause or the result of the entire situation happening? And that's the first question. And in connection to that, I think people especially in sort of I want to say online sociology, this kind of thing, often connect this kind of rise of populism to the economic decline. But I was uncertain as for that is the case in Russia. I think Russia did see an economic rise after the collapse. And do you think that the rise and fall of the nostalgia feeling is coherent with the economy? And yeah, that's my two question. And a third little one, just you mentioned the nature of modern society produce nostalgia. I think that's a very interesting point. Could you elaborate on that? That's my question. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zalun. And I theorized nostalgia as the factor of the current events in Russia. Only one factor. I don't like to speak about nostalgia that the sole cause of the state of things in Russia, but it is an emotional fuel of the current regime and politics. Yes, and the psychological dynamic of nostalgia is very adaptive in our case, but nationalism, I think so, can be without nostalgia, maybe, and without, for example, loss or longing for traditional institution. We have nostalgia about the previous day in our country, for example, and I really like your questions about the coherence between nostalgic moods and nostalgic politics and economic development. It's very interesting point. I didn't think about it, but it's not the case. I think so that in Russia. When in some countries, for example, in China or maybe South Korea, they really like a combination of tradition and modernization. But in Russia, it's not the case. I think so. These policies resist to modernization, and this economic growth, I think it's too early to have some optimism about our economic growth. I think it's not reliable. It's not reliable. I think it's the growth, the tempo of the economic development. It's not the indicator of the economic affairs. I think it's in some sort of some sort of pace, but not it's not about stability or about the consumption or so on. And maybe it's not for Russia. It's not for Russia. It is. But I will think about this. I will think about this. Maybe nostalgia has an invisible function for our society in that respect. Maybe. I don't know. Thank you so much.
Excellent, excellent. Is there anyone who wants to add anything else?
Vlada wanted to say something.
Thank you very much, Olga. It was a beautiful presentation, and thank you all for your comments and your statement and your questions. I agree with you that there is an interrelation between alienation and nostalgia. But in the case of Iranian people, people, majority of people, are basically nostalgic for the past to some degree, but the stated, the theocracy over there is not nostalgic for the past, because if they are nostalgic, it means that they should say goodbye to their power. But many, for example, in the case of Iranian women, so they're nostalgic for the past, that they want to get their rights back. And here I can see a kind of a counter alienation in here rather than alienation, because here is nostalgia plays a kind of a counter alienation, in terms of the degree of these people who really wants to, basically go for their rights and claim their rights. So I would like to know your, your opinion in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Really, the case of Iran is very interesting for me, because we have now, if I can say that I feel some nostalgic, but not for the Soviet Union. I feel nostalgic about the beginning of the 21st century, that when we had a hope for the future and for the modernization and really democratic state. Yes, if I feel nostalgic on that years in our country, but now we have restoration of the previous social institutions. Yes, thank you so much.
Very good. Excellent. Excellent.
May I just suggest something?
Yes,
Olga,
Vesela, please.
yeah, Olga, the next time we have a conference, whether this is the forum or the World Congress, so please have a session about nostalgia. We all have something to say about nostalgia. It will be a very interesting session. Please do this. Okay.
Okay. It is very interesting and inspiring for me. Yes, it makes sense, I think. Thank you, Vesela. Thank you for your comments, dear colleagues. It's very inspiring, and I see it as a great support of my study and intellectuals, Russian intellectuals too. Thank you.
I believe it was beautiful and an honor for us to hear you today.
Yes, and I've sent you my presentation and my chapter about nostalgia without alienation, but simply about nostalgia, and maybe you can read and understand better my thoughts about the social emotional side of nostalgia, and you can find there the references to outstanding publication.
Okay. I received here. I believe that everyone could download, right? It was accessible to everyone. Very good. Andrew, you raised your hand.
Yeah. I guess this is for further discussion some other time, because we're running out of time. But the connection between capitalist society, the essential direct connection, inherent connection between nostalgia and capitalist society or late capitalist society, I'm not quite sure how best to define it. The point that that particularly interests me, right? Why late capitalism in general, late capitalism, should have a direct connection with nostalgia, because well, I'm thinking of experiences, in the United States, right? When this nostalgia issue became a prominent policy, over what period of time has it emerged and developed, and this sort of thing. It's a bit more understandable to me when you are talking about a country that has come apart, shall we say, in some way, right? Or whether that be, the countries of the former Warsaw Pact in Eastern Europe, the former Soviet-style societies, or the Soviet Union itself, a country that has come apart in some way, that's gone through a period of clear suffering, disorganization, reorganization, and so on. Now, that's a bit more, that's a bit more, shall we say, intuitive, that there would be a connection between nostalgia and those kinds of situations. But the connection between nostalgia and capitalism as such, that I find a very interesting consideration, and look forward to talking with you about that at some length in the future. So I find that particularly fascinating. Why successful, why powerful, successful countries would, be beset by movements that want to have a return to greatness, right? But thanks. It was a wonderful presentation.
Thank you.
I believe that's it. Olga, I will stop recording, and as soon as I have the link, I will send you so you can download. All right? And then you can share with anyone you will know. Excellent. Before I open the floor, I just want to give you a few announcements. We already have the next Talk and Alienation sessions for March and April. However, they are not on Wednesdays. They will be on Thursdays, because as a coordinator for this endeavor, I like this word. It's a word you use in college. So about this endeavor, I know that many of us are teachers, so we teach at a specific date. So our flexibility is changed semesterly. So some people cannot come on Wednesdays because they're teaching. Some people, we also have to be careful about their time zones. So instead of being on the last Wednesday of every month at the same time, which has been for the same time for the past 2 years, right? Vesela and Angel were there when the first session was on a Wednesday at this very same hour. So the next session will be on March the 28th, Thursday. I have already updated the website with the new schedule. So it's going to be on March the 28th with Miriam Adelman and her incredible work about human-horse relation, human-animal relation, and equinotherapy. It's very interesting. And in April, let me check here the calendar. And in April 25 April, we'll have Sunjin with her work about Bauman. And it's going to be at 9 a.m. UTC, okay, the time zone. So perhaps it would be like 10, 11, noon in Moscow, and around 10 a.m. in Sweden and France and Europe in general. So we are changing the time, which is good, to take into consideration Sunjin's time zone in Tokyo. So it's going to be good for Shaolun as well. And I am happy that we can consider them globally, because we are a global collective of thinking people. At least I think. I think. Very good. The book project is on its way. I have already started the revision. It's a double revision for each chapter. So the first chapter is being reviewed grammatically, and then after the author's changes, we are going to send to this second and final revision before publishing. So perhaps this week and the next, you will receive your chapter back. And what else? Let me check here. Afterwards, we can talk about this event. Andrew and Vesela, have you thought something about the event this year in April or May?
Well, to be honest with you, it's been off of my list of things to think about in the last couple of weeks because I've been working on another project that involves quite a bit of writing. And it will be held. What are the precise dates that's going to be held? 23rd, 24th